Okay, so just showing how to set tile in a shower pan area. This shower pan has all been pre-worked prior to me shooting the video. It's ready to tile, and this is a travertine type tile to kind of match what the wall is, and it's a natural stone. It's a 2x2 that's on a mat, and I've kind of done the layout already. There are different ways you can do your layout. As many videos as you can watch people do layouts. They'll do the math and figure out where this tile is going to fit here and this and that, blah blah blah, and they'll try and go from the right side to the left side and measure out and, you know, really confuse things a lot more than they need to be. When you walk into a shower, this is the way I do it anyway. When you walk into the shower, there's usually two sides that you see. You see this side, and in this bathroom in particular, bathrooms set up differently, but the point is there's always two sides you can see first. That's going to be this side here in this case, and that side there. So my first tile always starts in that corner, and if I have to shave off any of the tile, which I did in this case and I'll show you in a moment, then I always shave it off in the corner so that it fits up as flush as I can against the wall here and as flush as I can against the wall here. Sometimes this corner tile way in the back has to be shaved off. I'll do a little shave from there to there and then a little one from there to there, so that corner tile will not quite be a 2x2 square, but the remaining tile along it will be. And the reason for that is because we don't have completely straight walls. When you do a shower pan, as this one was done a few days ago, the liner goes up and it gets folded in that corner. It gets folded in this corner, and then it gets folded over here and over here. So there's a slight bump out because when you have that fold and you put your wall board on it, it's going to bump out your wall just a little bit. And so that's kind of the reason that you have to do this shaving of the tile so that this one fits perfectly. There is a bump out over here on this wall. I already know that because I folded the liner there, so it's bumping out just a little bit. And then of course, you know, there's a little bump out on this side, which means that this tile won't fit in the corner very snug and nicely, so it had to be shaved down. When I walk into a bathroom, in addition to the very first area on the threshold on the floor, I always set my floor tile over at the threshold first, so that when you walk into the bathroom, all that tile, I didn't do this tile, but all this tile here is the most symmetrical straight tile that you can possibly have. If there's any cuts to be had, they're going to be up under the cabinet, they're going to be, you know, back in the bathroom somewhere, most likely pretty well hidden. So that's the same philosophy I use with shower floors. The shower floor, since you walk in and you see this first, this is what happens as far as cuts go, so that I can get all my tile lined up correctly in this wall and this wall. If there are any cuts whatsoever, they will be down here where you cannot see them, and in this case I have almost a half a cut on this tile going all the way from left to right. And then if there's any cuts in the back, then they are what they are. In this case I have probably, it tapers down. Again, I have a little bump out. My shower pan was folded right here, so this fits a lot more snug than does the back area. Whichever case it is, you know, you're going to end up somehow or another with a small cut. It rarely matches up perfect, even if your tile, you know, are perfect in regard to what your measurement is of your shower pan. Almost inevitably you're going to have cuts. So again, there's different ways to do this. There is a very, very small gap over here against the wall that's probably 1/4 of an inch. This gap over here is probably better than 3/4 of an inch. So you could theoretically make up the difference of this 3/4 and this 1/4 and bump your tile out 1/2 inch from the wall, and then this will in turn be about 1/2 inch from the wall, so that the symmetry works right. But in this case it doesn't really matter. What I normally do anyway after I set my floor tiles, I grout. And in addition to the grouting process, so imagine that I've already set all this floor tile and it's the next day. Before I put my wall tile on, I'm going to grout this discrepancy. So the grout will go inside here and it'll dry nice and hard with an additive, and then the tile is going to overlap it. There's going to be a little bump out on this tile, obviously, because I'm going to have thin set on the wall. And once I bump out the tile, obviously there'll be a nice transition from the wall tile down to the floor tile, and no water will ever go up under here, so even if it did, you know, you have your grout back here. So that's kind of the reason that I do what I do. And this isn't perfect lines either. By the time I actually set the tile and get my lines more perfect, you see the little gap there. This should be a little bit wider, in which case I already have pre-cut some sliver pieces. And again, if you're not comfortable using the grout method I just described, you can put the sliver pieces inside of there, and regardless, the tile is going to overlap those sliver pieces as well. But I've already pre-cut those in anticipation to put them over here, which kind of gives you more or less of a full tile over here by the time the wall tile goes on, and there'll be a full tile over here with the little bump out that I talked about with regard to the thin set. So look wise, it'll be symmetrical when everything is said and done. And that's kind of the way that I get started on this. Obviously your drain is under here. I've seen some people come in and try and scribe out exactly where their drain is going to be. So they will just kind of, you can actually see through the cracks here, they'll kind of draw out where the drain is going to be, and then take all those tile off and start pre-cutting them around the drain. But because things change slightly as I set the tile, movement of the tile, where I put it, etc., I do not do my pre-cuts like that. You can. There's nothing to stop you from just cutting out from the back of that mesh those 6 or 7 tile and pre-cutting them, but I would never do that because I don't know exactly where those tile are going to line up. So I do those pre-cuts as I get to them. So I'm going to set all this tile along this wall here first, and then work my way backwards like this. The reason that I planned it out already is because, again, I've already done some of my pre-cuts on the wall so that I know exactly where my tile are going to end up with regard to cuts here and over here. And that's kind of the reason that I've laid it out already. But this isn't finite. This isn't exactly where the tile is going to be until I start laying it. So that's kind of an explanation how to do the layout on the tile. Let me show you one of these so you'll get a better idea. So there you go. It's just a matted tile with this fiberglass backing, and you can cut off the pieces that you want when you want to. And you always start with a dry pan, and the dry pan should be obviously dusted off, vacuumed, swept, whatever, to get the residual dust off of that from pouring the mortar in there. And some people say to wet the pan, so slightly spritz some water on the pan with a sponge or whatever, wipe it down so that the adhesion between the tile, once you butter out your thin set, the adhesion of the tile to the pan will be correct. Sometimes I do that if my pan's been sitting around for a week or longer. I might do that because it's extremely dry. But mostly I just take my trowel, make sure that I push the thin set down onto the surface of the pan. And I've never ever had tile pop up, so I don't really do that. But you can if you want to. So I'm going to get started on setting this tile. Okay, so before you get started on this, one thing I forgot to mention. When I poured this pan, you know, I always do it by just my own judgment. I use levels and I slop the mortar around until I get it to the point that I want it so that it have a decent slope. The next day I can manipulate my pan a little bit with a blade, scrape off inconsistencies, high points, etc., so that I can get the slope that I want going down to the drain. But you know, it's never a science, it's never perfect. So the third time I have to manipulate would be this process. So if you have high points or low points, you need to know that, so that when you trowel out your thin set, that you're making sure, you know, that you set your tile, you're going to have a good slope. So I always keep a couple levels around different sizes, and the first thing you want to do, go from corner to front and find out what your pitch is. So if the bubble goes up that way, you know you have a good pitch, you're pretty good, then you can trowel out your thin set, you know, relatively thin. And then I do all the 3 corners the same way until I'm certain that certain areas that I have to adhere to are taken care of. Having said that, when I trowel out my thin set, I have a pretty good eye, and so I can kind of look at my thin set and tell going across that it's got a pitch and that all my thin set is leveled out, you know, fairly well. So I don't get too caught up in that, but I thought maybe you should know, if you're trying to do this the first time yourself, that you have to have that proper pitch. There's no turning back once you set this tile. So that's very, very important to know. And so I'm going to get started on this. And the sheets I'm taking off are all full sheets, so I'm not concerned about how I'm stacking them behind me. And you can set the rest of these any fashion you want. I like to have them exactly where I'm going to be putting them, right on the outside of my pan, so that I don't get confused as to where they go. I guess it goes without saying, but I'm saying it anyway. Of course, what you could do, you know, especially on these that are cut, that are pre-cut already, you know, you could draw a number 1 on your curb top, and then a 1 on your tile, number 2 on your curb top, and number 2 on your tile, etc., and that way you know exactly where they're going to go afterward. This is my keystone tile right here, so I need to know that this is the tile that's going to rest up against the corner there. So I'm just putting a mark on it so that when I start laying it, I do not forget. My thin set is relatively thick. I'm not really doing it thin, mainly because I already have a little dampness going on here from having done the cuts. So once I put it on there, it's going to mix with that moisture and give me a little thinner consistency, but that's basically what I want. I don't want this to take forever to set up, and I don't want to mix it thin enough that it breaks down the adhesion qualities. Okay, that's about where I want it. If you notice, I took a little extra care around the drain area to make sure that my thin set is pushed against my mortar bed. So I usually do that in advance of me ever setting tile around that, which kind of gives me a good adhesion. Once I get to that point, this thin set will be fairly tacky. And then of course I'll add some more thin set around it to get to the height that I want. So this is a good opportunity to get your level again and do one last check with your level to make sure you have a decent pitch. So in this case I'm pretty flat to the floor with my level, and my bubble goes back, oh, I don't know, to about the second line. So I know I have a pretty good pitch right there. And about the same pitch on that side too. And then I have a smaller level. Yep. So that's about where I want it. I'm going to add just a little more thin set to both of these corners. Okay, so the reason I did that, my pitch was fairly decent going up into that corner, but I wanted it a little bit more profound, which is about what I have now. So again, very imperative that those corners get done with enough pitch. You know, that's usually where people run into problems, is the corners and the sides where water might pool because, you know, your pitch is level rather than being straight down. That all your tile, especially on a mosaic like this, that all your tile have to be pitched perfect so that your water runs down to the drain. And one of the difficulties with wetting your mesh on your wet saw is that there's only glue on the mesh, and so that glue gets weak and the tiles start coming off. So you just got to put them back on. Then you're going to check your pitch again, and once your pitch is good, then you want to push the tile down, usually with a float, because the float has a flat, even surface. Okay, that one always takes a while because you want to make sure, again, you know, that your pitch with your bubble and all that stuff, you got to take a little bit of time on that. You don't want any water pooling up later. And then you just continue the process. Obviously, that one's a lot quicker. Perfect. So, as I said, the process goes faster now. And my pitch is very good. Okay, so now I'm on my last row. See how quickly that went. And my last row is a cut piece, which is way over here. Okay. Continuing on with the process, now that those tile are done, focus my attention back the other way. comes the part for the drain. So as I look down on this, I can see which tile I need to cut off of here. And that's it. Those tile will get cut individually in just a moment. As soon as I set this. I'm actually going to cut these two off because I want it to rise a little higher than what the drain is, same as I'm going to do around the drain.